Hello, happy Monday. I am running a little bit late. It's been quite a day. So it's Monday and time for Monday motivations. I've missed the past 2 weeks. So I am happy to be back on schedule more or less. I'm just going to wait a minute to see if anyone joins. And then I'll start in. So yes, Monday has been off to a start already this week, but it's all good. It's all good. It's coming right along, everything. So, all right. I do want to just share before I start getting going that I am taking pre-orders for my forgiveness journal. Super excited. And it's going to be available very, very, very soon on Amazon. So that is coming up, and I will be sharing with you all how you can purchase and share with other people as soon as it is hot on the presses, literally. So yes, that is what is the next project that's going to be released. But I was thinking about actually this past week that I'm going to start creating a free challenge on anger. It's something that it keeps coming up in my thought process that I need to create a challenge for people to help others, work through and release some anger. And actually, that's a little bit what I was planning on talking about this evening. So I will get right into it since I've already shared that I think I'm going to start a challenge soon. I've got the brainstorm list complete. I've brainstormed some ideas of what to include in the challenge, and I'm going to start working on putting it together. So it should be ready maybe June. We'll see. Not May. May, it's not going to come out, but maybe June it will be ready, and I will share that. So if you're interested in the anger challenge that I'm going to be putting together, you can always reach out to me or just comment below in the comments that you are interested in me sharing the info with you when it's ready. So I wanted to speak. This thought kept coming up also for the past week in my mind, the elephant in the room. So it could be anything, right? It's just the very common metaphor of an elephant being in a room. And what does that mean to you, right? You have a living room. If you are like me in Brooklyn and you're just in an average apartment, not anything fancy, your living room or any of your rooms might be on the smaller side, and an elephant is quite large, right? It takes up a lot of space. If I had an elephant in my living room right now, literally, it would be very hard for me to walk into another room. He'd probably be blocking my doorway behind me. He might also, with his big old rear end, just keep me from even being able to sit on the desk chair, right? He just might be taking up my furniture, right? It's going to be very awkward for me, right? It's going to be very hard for me to maneuver around. And that's what happens a lot of times when we go through something, either growing up as a child, there may have been an elephant in the house or a couple elephants even. Sometimes it feels like, in families or even in our own individual, lives as an adult, like there's a whole herd of elephants, right? Things that we've accumulated from when we were a child and things that happened to us that we went through when we were teenagers or in our early 20s. And so we might not actually have one elephant in our rooms. We might have a whole herd. And that makes it very difficult, right, as you know, to get through anything. So What happens that causes the elephant to be allowed to go on and hang out in our rooms? And the thing that I would say I have noticed both in my life and also in just conversations with people that I've had with them over the years, and it may not have been in a coaching situation, it could have been just like in a friendship or in just a casual conversation with someone that I would meet randomly when I was out and about, and just started talking to them on like the train or in a coffee shop or in the park or whatever. And the idea is shame. So a lot of things have happened to us when we were little and then even growing up as adults that we are ashamed of. And that keeps us quiet. We were either told not to talk about it as a child when that thing happened to us. I know a lot of times, actually, I have spoken and had a lot of men tell me, not men that I was dating, men who were just my friends that I was just, a confidant to. I have had so many men talk about how when they were children, they had an older adult, whether it was like a babysitter or someone that they had to collect rent from or whatever it was, women who sexually abused them. And this is very common, and it's not talked about often in our society at all. Rape and as well as sexual harassment or sexual assault is oftentimes thought about as women, and it can be something that we're ashamed of, but it happens so often also to men, and it's a silent thing we don't talk a lot about, right? So you grow up and you learn from a child not to share out the embarrassing things that happen to you. And then a lot of times those things, those habits that we picked up when we were children, we end up carrying into our adult life. So now maybe we tried to get into a relationship with someone and whatever happened. For whatever reason, it didn't work, but there could be shame in resulting in that, right? Or there could be something in our business that did not work, right? A lot of times as entrepreneurs, I know at one point when I was starting out as a businesswoman, I was like, I'm so ashamed and embarrassed about my photos and that I'm, how the state of my business was. I kind of covered up a lot of times how I didn't have the proper paperwork in order initially when I started my business. And now I do talk about it. I do publicly share, and I help other, business owners get their business in order. But I didn't want to admit for quite a long time that at one point I was operating as a business owner without a business bank account, right? These were things when I found out, like, oops, I don't have these things, I was ashamed about, and I wanted to take care of it quickly. And I wasn't talking with other people and sharing it publicly, because as a business owner, you want people to think you have it all together and you're successful. Well, some things are together and some things are not. And right. And so holding that back, I wasn't even helping myself learn and grow, right? And meeting the people that I needed to meet to help me grow my business. And I was not helping other people to grow their business by sharing what I went through, right? So it could be, an elephant in the room that is holding us back either in a personal way, like psychologically, emotionally. We're ashamed and embarrassed about things that have happened to us, either like physical traumas or things that happened in our family. Maybe there was a parent who was an alcoholic, or there was some sort of abuse in the home, physical abuse, right? Or in our own lives, in our own dating relationships, or it could be even in our business, right? So many things we have been taught from an early age to keep quiet. And I was sharing this in my thoughts a couple weeks ago for Resurrection Sunday. And, one thing that we're taught from an early age in school is if something does not go right, if you get a 100 on your spelling test, you get a little sticker, you get a smiley face, whatever it is, to make yourself feel good, right? The teacher is like praising you and you might share it with your friends. But if you fail the spelling test, you hide it. There's red marks all over the place. And we're taught to be kind of like embarrassed that we failed the spelling test, right? So we are taught from an early age, from, as young as 5, when we first go to kindergarten, to hide away things that are embarrassing and to publicly only show our successes. So what happens when we end up in situations where, in a personal relationship like a marriage or an engagement or dating or trying to run our businesses, as our minds are all messed up? Because on the outside we're trying to share our successes, and on the inside we're afraid that everyone's going to see our elephant in the room. So the elephant actually maybe started out as like a baby elephant with something that happened to you when you were a child, and it's now grown into either a full herd of elephants, like I was saying earlier, or just like a giant adult-sized elephant, and it's taking up all the space, and you're afraid to show up because you're afraid everyone's going to see you as a fraud, imposter syndrome, for example. Or what I had a lot of problems with personally, in my photography, was I wanted everything to look perfect and I wanted everything to be perfect. And I was so hard on myself because there were other areas in my life that were not perfect. But I was thinking that if I could make, certain things perfect, and if I could get the perfectionism down, it would cover up and it would compensate for the things in my life that were not perfect, that were not working right. Right? So there's this shame, and it grows bigger and bigger, and we don't talk about it and we hide it because we've been taught, like I was saying earlier, since we were children, it can either come in a family or from like home or school. The family home, or school. We get these messages. There's this problem, but don't talk about it. Hide it. And what does that do? It creates in us anger towards ourselves. And so this is why I've started to think about this, and why I want to start doing a challenge on anger, is because when we keep silent and we just keep everything, that elephant, silently in our spirit, it grows, right? And it festers. And we don't really know how to release it, because by the time it's a big grown elephant, it's just shitting, pooing all over the place, literally, in our lives. And so when we walk into a relationship with our children, if we're parents, with our partner, with our colleagues, with our business, we're not able to really fully be confident. We're not able to really walk regally and just hold our head up confidently, like we are the royalty that we are when we were created in God's image as his child. And the saddest thing is, this is so prevalent in Christian settings, where people will say, so how are you? Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored. Meanwhile, your life is a mess, right? This was something that I struggled with. And I was always afraid that if I ever said anything like, oh, well, I had a bad week last week, everything fell apart. And then people would think that maybe I was not a good Christian, like I was doing something wrong. I hadn't done anything wrong. It's just that everything just kind of didn't work that particular week, right? So we're so trained to just push those things away instead of dealing with them. So it's not us, this is something that people have struggled with, all over the place, all business owners, all parents, all spouses, all children, all students, right? Everyone, all workers, we all have these things that we just don't feel good about ourselves. But when we start to talk about it, because when we keep it silent, when we keep the shame and we hold on to it silently and let that elephant just sit there, it changes our thought process, right? And we start thinking based on the elephant and not based on who we are, what we are. We forget our value. We lose ourselves. Our identity starts being formed around, what we're trying to cover up versus what we are, or who we are rather, created to be. And so if you are, angry about something, it's okay to share it. You don't have to get on social media. You don't have to share it, publicly. As I've said many times, nothing necessarily is, meant to be shared publicly, but to just even speak it out loud, then we're starting to hear the words and the thoughts that are going on in our brains. And it's actually a way of starting to break free of a lot of the toxic and self-destructive, the unforgiveness, the anger, a lot of the hard emotions that we've been harboring and have been turning in on ourselves. We could be also very angry at God. Like, why did my mom die when I was young? Well, not my mom personally. My mom is still alive, thank God. But what I'm saying is, I know people, their mom died when they were very young. At least the people that I've met were at one point angry. Why did my mom get taken from me, right? Why did this happen? And if it's just kind of like this silent anger where you're afraid to express it out loud, or you're even afraid to express it to God, it's going to be kind of like become this silent killer, right? It's just going to be the stress, everything that's going to build up and become, manifest into health, all sorts of health issues. So, right. So whatever that thing is that you're angry about, that you're ashamed about, start to release it. You can just start talking to yourself or talking out loud to God and sharing these things. So if you, for example, read Psalm, it's in Psalm 22, David is very upset. He was a king, but he had his low points. And he says, my God, why have you abandoned me? Why are you so far away when I groan for help, right? So a lot of times we feel so isolated. We've been silent and we've been holding it in. We've not been talking about the elephant in the room, even not wanting to admit it to ourselves. We haven't been sharing it with other people. We've even not shared it with God, right? And we're just like groaning. But in David's case, he had shared. Apparently, it seems like he had been groaning for God to help him. Why had he not helped him yet? I don't know. But that was where he was at that point in life, right? He was expressing himself. The Psalms are songs, right? Those are things that are written down. So one way to start getting your thoughts out, and which is why I did the forgiveness journal, was it's a way to get your emotions out onto paper, to just release, right? So you can start releasing, those feelings of shame, those feelings of anger, those feelings of confusion. A lot of times the elephant in the room confuses us because we're like, I didn't do anything wrong. None of this is my fault. Why did this happen to me? I don't understand. This is so confusing. So just starting to release, either speaking the words out loud to yourself, or, just in a space, like I'm in my living room right now. So you may be in your living room, you may be in your bedroom, wherever you happen to be, right? Just start releasing those words. It's going to start shrinking the elephant. When you start to hear the words that you speak, your brain starts to think about what you're saying. Wait a second. I have been embarrassed since I was a child that my parents divorced. Why would I be divorced? Why would I be embarrassed by that? This is not my fault. But all these years, I've been blaming myself. I've been saying, oh, my mom and my dad split up. Maybe if I had been a better child, right? So that might be something that you could be thinking. It could be something that has nothing to do with you, your actions, but when you're keeping those things in your just spirit and in your mind, your mind, because you haven't released those thoughts out, to hear that that's actually really not logical. I was a good kid. Okay, my parents are not divorced. I'm using it as an example. But, I was a good kid, like you start processing things differently when you start hearing the words and you start hearing, oh, that doesn't really make sense. So instead of being in this silent space, you want to start releasing it by either writing it out, and then you can kind of read it through and be like, wait, this sentence doesn't match with this sentence. Something's not adding up here. Huh. Okay. And you can start processing it. Now, the thing is that when you start processing things and being like, okay, I just heard what I've been thinking in my head for the past 10 years. I just wrote out, and now I'm reading and seeing from a different perspective, how I've been feeling for the past 10 years. This looks different than how I imagined it to be. And then you start judging yourself. You just want to just kind of neutrally examine it. So there shouldn't be any, you want to avoid any, self-criticism. This is just releasing yourself. Just for example, this is a really trivial example, but the other day I was online and I was trying to buy my ISBN number for the journal that's coming out. Well, I got confused, and in my brain, I was silent. I was like, this doesn't make sense. Nothing's making sense. So I started texting someone who I knew could help me, and I sent like 5, I blew up his cell phone. I sent like 5 text messages back to back, and mostly because I got kind of in a panic because I wasn't really talking it out. I wasn't trying to talk out loud to myself. I was just trying to read through and think in my head how to answer these questions that didn't make sense to me about, how to go about, a couple of the things that I needed to do in order to get this number and attach it to my book, right? So living in our heads, that's just like a trivial, not a major deal, right? Example. But when we just live in our heads, when we silently are just kind of trying to process it in our head instead of speaking it out and releasing it out, we can end up putting ourselves into a panic. I also wanted to share, another verse with you. It was from Job. Job is a really fascinating book because similar to, maybe things that you've had, he lost his whole family, right? He lost his house. He just lost everything. Even his wife was scorning him and telling him to curse God and die. And he says in Job 3:23, I cannot eat for sighing. So he can't even eat. He just was crying all the time into his food, right? He's crying over his dinner if he had it. My groans pour out like water. So it's just kind of unending, right? Water just goes everywhere. So he's just everywhere. His emotions are just all over the place. He's just pouring everything out. That I always feared has come to pass. So this is another thing. A lot of times what happens and hold on, I want to take a drink of water. And what kept me silent was I was afraid of what would happen if anyone found out about the physical trauma, the rape that I went through, right? I was afraid. What I was afraid of happening if I said anything to anyone, and how people might think about me, how people might perceive me. That thought, those emotions, I kept silent, and they were shameful. They just built up in my mind. They built up in my heart, and it created immense stress, anxiety. At one point, my hair was literally falling apart because the stress so much. I was diagnosed when I was 19 with overactive thyroid, and it had been put under control with medicine. But because I was so stressed out with my shame, my body just kicked into really high gear. and my thyroid levels just went out of control. So the medication I was on was not controlling it properly. And I went and I had my blood work done, and my endocrinologist was like, what is going on with you? Your blood work is all over the place. And my hair was falling out and everything. And it was literally because I was so ashamed that I was beating myself up. I was angry. I was hurting, and I was silent. It was like this elephant in the room, and I could not get it out. And it took over a year before I was finally able to just say the words out loud of what had happened to me. And even on top of that, because I was ashamed, I did lie about what happened to me. And then I was like, now I'm a liar, and I had this happen, and it ate me up physically, basically. So it is so imperative that whatever elephant is in the room, you share. When I am saying that holding things out or holding things inside of you instead of letting them out will affect your health. Everything that I teach, everything that I share, I have literally walked through. So like I said, I know firsthand what being silent and hiding in that shame does. My hair was literally falling out. My blood work was all over the place because of the stress and everything that I was under with trying to hide from what happened to me. So this is the nice thing about it. We do have promise that when we release it, when we go to God, when we are brave enough to just say out loud what happened to us, to admit it, to just begin sharing it, to begin journaling about it, to begin pouring out. And sometimes it may be even that you even have to repent, because like I said a little bit ago, I was raped, but then I was ashamed about it. So I tried to hide it. And when I did try to talk to people about it, I lied about it, right? So I said I had been sexually assaulted. I didn't actually say what had happened to me, which are two different things, that he had tried to sexually assault me. So the thing is, I had to repent to God for lying. I had to admit what I had done wrong, which was lying to try to cover up my shame about what happened to me. And the thing is that God does restore us. Whatever we've lost, he always restores. It may not look like how we want it to. It may not look like how we would imagine it to look, but he promises in Joel 2:25, I will restore to you the years the locusts have eaten. And in my case, it wasn't locusts. I didn't have literal insects gnawing away at my house, but it was gnawing away at me being able to have relationships with my friends. Even I kind of wanted to hide, right? It was eating up at my business. It was eating up at me physically, right? And so once I released the shame, I started healing. I started releasing the anger, releasing the unforgiveness. I started just kind of doing things a little bit at a time. My body went back to normal, right? My thyroid's not out of control anymore. My hair is not falling out anymore, right? God literally restored my physical health to me. But the thing is that in order to do that, I had to face the elephant in my room. I had to go through and I had to deal with it. So that's why, and I think that this forgiveness journal that I have done and have put together is really powerful. I've had people say, I had one person say he shared that it was better than 5 years of therapy for him. But I feel like there still work needing to be done, because I've been thinking, a lot of times with our unforgiveness, with our shame, there is so much anger. And people, we don't always know how to deal. Just like we don't always know how to forgive, we don't always know how to release this anger and the shame what's triggered the anger. So that's why I'm going to start working on putting together a challenge in order to help people with that. as well to build on top of, just helping people heal. I think this is I'm excited. It's going to be the next thing that I'm going to be focused on, helping you all with. But I do hope that those of you, if you are watching this even in the future, 5 years from now on YouTube or wherever, that you start to think, what is it that I'm hiding behind? What is it that I'm holding on to? What is the elephant in my room? And start just talking out loud to no one or to God, if that is, who you pray to, and just explaining and just sharing everything. So that is literally when I literally said out loud to no one. I was just in a room and I said it to no one in particular, that I was raped, and I lied to the man and those who I love about that. It changed my entire life. It was literally like a weight has lifted off me. I felt literally like something broke. It was like a spiritual thing. Like I literally felt like it something like broke. It's really hard to explain, but that right there was what began changing things and helping me to be able to move forward. Because until I could admit out loud what had happened to me and what I had done as a result, I was stuck. I was stuck in one place, or stuck in even being put backwards, right? Because I really was trying to hide from it. So just sharing it out to no one in particular is like the best first way to start addressing the elephant in the room that is taking up space in your life. Because if you let that elephant stay there, it will just keep getting fatter and bigger, and there's just going to get to be an old elephant. And you do not want to be 90 with your 90-year-old elephant, right? We want to, we're here for however long we are here on this earth, and we're meant to enjoy it. God said, I came that you should have life, and life more abundantly. That's why Jesus came. That's why he died for us. That's why he resurrected and is now up in heaven with God, watching over us, helping us to pray, everything. He's our advocate. He's our lawyer before God. He's helping us, right? All of that is so that we can have a life more abundantly. It's not so that we can be ashamed and hide. And so we kind of lose our power as the daughters or sons, as kings and queens in a royal family. We lose that, that elegance that we can have when we're hiding in shame. It's making us small. We're not able to, spread out and hold our head up. And where, if you're a king or queen, you have a crown on your head. If your head's down, your crown's going to fall off, right? We want our crown to stay on our head, and we want to be able to, have that abundant life. And when I say abundant life, I'm not saying it's meaning like, a Rolls Royce in the driveway and a 15-bedroom house with a swimming pool. I'm just talking about literally abundance of freedom, abundance of joy, abundance of peace, abundance of spiritual health, of physical health, and of emotional health. So many people in the world have all like the material, right? Abundance, but they're like a walking, zombie, so to speak, because they don't have that peace. They don't have that joy. They don't have that freedom, that spiritual and emotional freedom. When we have that, that's irreplaceable. Those are things like nothing else can buy. There's no amount of money that I can pay or I am willing to take from someone. No one can buy my peace of mind, right? That is priceless, just for starters, just alone for the peace of mind, much less for physical health. My grandmother used to always say, when you have your health, you have millions, right? And so we have to break free from our shame so that we can have our physical health. Like I said earlier, I lived it. What will happen to physical health when shame and the stress of it is allowed to take root? And it's not good. I am thankful to have hair and not have it falling out anymore. So those were my thoughts of what I had wanted to share this evening. So, the elephant in the room, the thing is, he was big in my mind, but once I started releasing, what was bothering me, what was weighing me down, what I was afraid of, it ended up really not being so bad. It was bad, obviously, right? I had to do healing, but in some ways, it has been a blessing. God does say all things will work together for good. And as a result of having to work through what I had to work through, I can now help others. So that is a blessing, right? I consider it a blessing. So those are, I think those are my thoughts for this evening. I keep saying I'm done and then I keep going, right? But I will be back next Monday. I hope with a good friend of mine to talk about nutrition and talk about, our physical health. So that was supposed to be this week, but it didn't work out. So hopefully next week I will be back with him and sharing about that. All right. So as always, if you have any questions or if you need anything, or you want to pre-order the forgiveness journal, feel free, reach out to me. I'm always here to do my best to support you, and have a wonderful rest of your week and also a good night's sleep. All right. Peace.